Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. The pen skittered across the table. She didn't reach for it. I pushed the decree closer, steady and final. I'm Mark, 35, and I thought I was done. Sign, my voice came clipped like it belonged to someone else. She pressed her lips thin and nodded once. Her fingers hovered over the line, then froze. Water, she murmured, reaching past the papers. Her hand trembled and clipped the glass. It rocked, then steadied on its own, daring us to blink. I slid a coaster under it and pulled back fast. She gave a tiny smile that never reached her eyes. I clocked the shake again and felt anger harden, then falter. You wanted this fast. I tapped the date with a knuckle. She flinched at the sound and tucked her hands under her thighs. The clock in the kitchen clicked, each tick louder. She stood, the chair legs scraped hard. Bathroom, she said, already moving down the hall. I watched the sway of her steps, counted, careful, practiced. I gathered the sheets, aligning edges out of habit. A folded appointment slip peeked from the fruit bowl. I did not touch it. My jaw clenched as if it mattered. She returned with damp sleeves and a fresh calm. Give me the pen. Her voice carried steel and something softer under it. I placed it in her palm and waited. Ink touched paper, then lifted. She squeezed the bridge of her nose. Headache, one word flat, an explanation that explained nothing. You okay? It came out half question, half challenge. She nodded without looking up. The pen hovered again, shaking like a compass near metal. I reached to steady her hand. She withdrew a fraction, not enough to be rude. Don't, she whispered, eyes on the blank space. The whisper hit harder than a shout. My phone buzzed on the table, unknown number. I ignored it and flipped the next page over. She watched the screen light fade, breathing shallow through her mouth. Let's finish, I said, marching the process forward. She signed a second line, then capped the pen like sealing a wound. Her knuckles stayed white after the cap clicked. I gathered the copies and slid them into an envelope. She rose and crossed to the sink, moving like someone counting landmines. The faucet hissed and stopped short. I opened the door and waited, holding it like a terrible gentleman. She approached with the pen between two fingers, returning it like evidence. She didn't meet my eyes. Thanks, the word scraped my throat. She nodded and stepped back, grip loosening. The pen dropped and bounced once, then rolled under the stove. We both listened to it disappear. Silence followed with teeth. Somewhere a neighbor laughed at something easy. I hated whoever they were. Her phone vibrated on the counter. She ignored it. Mine buzzed again from my pocket, same number, more insistent. We stood in that odd mirror of choices. I'll send the final copy tonight. My hand found the knob. She pressed her palm to the door frame just above the latch, a small block, a small plea, or neither. Go, she breathed it, not quite a request. I stepped into the hall and faced the staircase down. The door eased shut behind me and stopped before the click. The phone kept buzzing, a stubborn mosquito. I pulled it out with a curse I barely felt. The screen showed the number again, patient and anonymous. I walked 3 steps, then answered with a tired hello. A woman's voice came clear and urgent. Is this Mark? She paused, as if testing the ground. Yes, my chest tightened without permission. She inhaled like she'd been running. She listed you as emergency contact. The stairwell echoed that phrase like a threat. I'm her emergency contact. The words left before I believed them. Where is she? My fist tightened around the rail. The line went silent, then an address dropped like a gavel. I took the stairs 2 at a time. The phone buzzed again in my palm. On my way. My voice sounded older than I felt. The door clicked behind me and I ran. Traffic crawled. I cut right and earned a horn. I risked a yellow and cleared it by inches. My chest hammered and I kept going. At intake, a nurse lifted her head. She listed you. Her tone softened when she saw my face. We need consent, she added without ceremony. Consent for what? My mouth dried as I spoke. Imaging with contrast, she replied, pen hovering over a box. Any allergies? Her eyes waited for a lie. None, I signed and handed the sheet back. The form trembled between us. She nodded once and buzzed a door. I found her through a small viewing panel, gown tied crooked, knees drawn tight. She spotted me and tapped twice on the mattress. Not quite a wave, not quite anything safe. You didn't have to come, she glanced at the band holding her hair. They needed a signature. I kept my back straight. I gave one, I added, steady. A tech appeared with a clipboard and a weary grin. We're taking her in now. He adjusted a lead clasp with practiced fingers. She swallowed and kept her gaze on the ceiling. I walked beside the wheels until the line stopped. She reached for my sleeve and missed by an inch. Don't make this about you. The whisper cut clean and I bled anyway. I waited near a closed door that breathed warm air. A code call barked down the hall, then faded. A vending machine clanged somewhere far away. I refused to sit. The nurse returned with a cup and an apology. It takes a bit. She checked the board and frowned. We'll update you. Then she was gone again. I counted breaths to stop the noise in my head. 4 in, 4 out, 4 empty. I had asked for distance. Now distance had a badge and a pager. A young resident appeared with shoe covers and confidence. We saw a nodule, he started, careful and measured. Small but odd. He watched my eyes, not my hands. Define odd. My voice sounded like a door jammed shut. Irregular edges, he replied, lips pressed thin. We'll need a closer look, he added, already stepping back. They wheeled her past me toward another room. She lifted two fingers to her throat, then dropped them, a private sign, a warning. I pretended to understand and failed. Do you want me here after? The question surprised both of us. She blinked long, then nodded once. No smile, no promise, just the nod. A clipboard returned with another line to ink. Sedation approval. The nurse held it like a bridge. I stared at the spot where my name should go. I wrote it and felt something give way. Not a noble thing, something thin that had been holding for months. It snapped without a sound anyone else could hear. The resident pulled me into a side nook. If the needle hits anything unstable, we stop. He traced an outline in the air, a circle, then a deeper circle. And if it doesn't, I hated how hopeful that sounded. We take a sample. His fingers hovered over an invisible target. Results won't be instant. He looked away when he said that. I nodded and stepped back into the hallway. My phone lit up with a new call. The lawyer's name glowed like a dare. Court time confirmed. My stomach lurched. I tapped decline and felt my face burn. Another buzz landed right after, persistent and bright. The nurse leaned toward me, whispering my last name. They were ready for the stick. They rolled her in under harsh humming. She turned her head and found me. Don't change your mind, she breathed, eyes holding mine. Not for this. I wanted to argue and win nothing. My tongue stayed put. I lifted a hand instead and touched my chest. Her gaze flicked to that spot and back up. The door closed and locked with a flat click. I leaned against cool tile and forced my shoulders down. Someone laughed behind a curtain. I stared at the seam where light escaped. Minutes stretched like bad string. I refused to guess the number. The code call from earlier repeated with different letters. I swallowed and hated every second of helplessness. The resident reappeared with scrubs wrinkled and damp. She's in recovery. He kept his tone neutral and brisk. Sample taken, no complications. He waited for questions that wouldn't help. Is it spread? My mouth formed the words before caution. Too early. He fixed his badge and checked a board. We'll move quickly if needed. Then he stepped away again. A volunteer pointed me to a curtained alcove. She lay drowsy with a monitor beep pacing her breaths. Her fingers picked at the blanket edge, stubborn and restless. You signed, she mumbled, eyes half open now. I signed, I answered, anchoring both feet. She tracked my face and tried a tired smirk. It broke before it landed. Don't tell anyone yet, she adjusted her pillow and winced. If this is nothing, we keep it quiet. The word nothing stuck in my throat like a hook. A clerk arrived with a stack of identifiers. Next of kin, she slid a square toward me. I wrote spouse, then scored a line through it. My hand shook as the ink dried. She watched me do it and looked away fast. That fits, she whispered, mouth tight. The word stung more than I expected. I tucked the pen under the page and breathed. The nurse returned with discharge steps and a future date. Follow up tomorrow morning. She circled a time with a quick motion. Fasting after midnight. Her eyes softened again. I'll drive you home. I kept it plain, not a plea. She hesitated and then gave a short nod. The nod felt provisional, like a loan with sharp terms. We set out slow, her hand on the rail. Each step took planning and a little pride. She refused the wheelchair with a glare that still worked. I didn't argue because I knew better. At the exit, my phone rattled again. Voicemail from the lawyer stacked behind a new text. Need confirmation today. The words pulsed while the sliding door opened. She noticed the screen and lifted her chin. Go finalize. No blame, no heat. Just a clean cut offered like medicine. I didn't take it. Tomorrow, I pocketed the phone and faced forward. She studied me for signs of weakness and found several. Then don't lie to yourself, she murmured, stepping into the night. I helped her into the car and buckled in. She swatted my hand away and made me smile. That smile faded when she pressed her palm to her throat. The gesture landed like a clock starting. We drove in quiet, both rehearsing different futures. Street after street slipped past like cards turned over. At a red light, she reached for my wrist. One favor, she whispered, barely audible. Name it. My pulse tripped under her fingers. If I call in the morning, answer fast. She let go and leaned back slowly. Don't make me chase you, she added, eyes closed. The light changed and I accelerated too hard. She grabbed the handle and breathed through pain. I eased off and stared at the road. Something irreversible had already begun. Her call hit before sunrise. Come now, no greeting. I was dressed in a minute and out the door. The promise from last night shoved me forward. I didn't ask why until I was driving fast. She waited by the curb, hunched and stubborn. I pulled up and she slid in slow. They moved the appointment up. Her thumb worried a wristband until it snapped. I kept my mouth shut and hit the turn. At registration, a tech lifted a clipboard like a verdict. Lab numbers are off, hydration first. He hooked a line with quick hands and no comfort. She watched the drip and chewed her lip. I watched her jaw lock and unlock. They wheeled her to ultrasound and waved me along. A new face aimed the probe and frowned. Tiny crystals, one node looks angry. The screen flickered and I stared anyway. I looked at her instead when my stomach rolled. Biopsy again? The clinician's voice lost its padding. She nodded once and breathed out through her nose. I reached for the side rail and stopped. She saw me hesitate and forced a thin grin. My phone lit up on the chair. A voicemail banner from a month back blinked up. Same clinic, same extension. I pressed play with my thumb shaking. We need you to return immediately. The date punched me in the throat. I pocketed the phone before she could clock my face. Everything okay? Her eyes searched me and found static. Work noise. I tried a shrug that didn't land. The lie tasted cheap and hot. They numbed her neck and prepped the needle. She grabbed my forearm and squeezed hard. Count me down. I counted from 3 like I meant it. The needle slid and her breath hitched. I kept counting anyway. The sample went into a vial and disappeared. A printer coughed and a label arrived. Rush order. The assistant scrawled the time and clipped the tray. The word rush stuck to my ribs like a warning. We sat in a recovery bay while Beeps argued. She slipped her phone into my palm. If I drop off, answer anything that rings. Her eyes stayed on the ceiling while she spoke. I felt the weight of that tiny trust. A coordinator stepped in with a focused stare. Surgeon consult at 9 tomorrow. She handed a single sheet with a location and time. Pre-op blood work now. She paused when neither of us blinked. We move faster when it looks like this. I signed the new permission line because no one else would. The pen left a dent in the cheap paper. She watched my hand and breath deeper. My chest tightened like I was the patient. Back in the hallway, my phone buzzed again. Lawyer finalized by noon. The message glowed bright and smug. I killed the screen with my thumb. The choice hovered like a bad angel. Go handle your stuff. She pushed a lock of hair behind her ear. I ride with transport after the draw. She tried to sit up and failed on the first try. I braced her elbow and pretended not to notice. A lab tech arrived with tubes and steady wrists. 3 vials, 1 sticker, 1 cotton square. Any dizziness lately? She nodded once without drama. I logged that nod and didn't like it. She slid off the cot too fast and wobbled. I caught her around the waist before she kissed the floor. Easy. The word came out softer than I wanted. Her fingers dug into my forearm until color returned. We reached the elevator and the doors hesitated. My phone rang again with the same name. She glanced at the screen and then at me. Answer or don't, just own it. The doors closed and my heart stayed outside. I took the call and gave a 1-word extension. The reply came clipped and legal. Noon became end of day with a fee. I agreed because the alternative felt worse. I hung up and hated the relief. Outside, the air hit sharp and necessary. She let go of my arm and steadied herself. Drop me at home. Her tone made it a rule. I'll meet you at 9. The way she said it allowed no argument. I drove without radio and watched for any drift. At the corner, she pressed 2 fingers to her neck. Not pain, a check, a countdown I wasn't invited to share. I tightened my grip on the wheel. We pulled up and she reached for the latch. One more thing. I set my phone between us. I heard your old message. She froze, then looked out at nothing. Her throat moved once and then stopped. I didn't want to trap you, S. He kept her eyes on the street. If this goes bad, I didn't want a hostage. The word hostage flared between us and dimmed. I tasted metal and swallowed it. Tomorrow I'm there. I kept my voice clean and level. Not for duty. Her mouth twitched and then held. We'll see, she whispered, climbing out. She took 3 steps and listed left. I was out of the car before she hit the hedge. She waved me off and forced herself upright. Go, she breathed, as if I were the one falling. I parked half a block away and killed the engine. Her window lit and then went dark. I waited for nothing in particular. I told myself it was only a few minutes. My phone finally went quiet on the dashboard. The quiet didn't help. I stared at her doorway like it might confess. Tomorrow waited on the other side of that frame. The elevator doors opened and she was already there. Jacket on, hair pulled tight, jaw locked. You're late. She checked my face like a clock. We walked without touching because touching would lie. A receptionist handed us badges and pointed down the hall. Pre-op conference room. Her tone made it routine. None of this felt routine. I swallowed and pushed the door that could change everything. The surgeon entered like a storm held in check. We have a plan. He laid out 2 options with clipped precision. Remove half or remove all. His eyes measured us like we were part of the scan. What gets me to tomorrow? She folded her arms and waited. Total removal, then targeted therapy if margins misbehave. He didn't blink when he used the word misbehave. My hands felt suddenly useless. Risk of nerve damage, he added, drawing air maps we could follow. Voice changes, calcium swings. He watched her reaction and not mine. She pressed her thumb to her throat and nodded once. I want the fastest path. She leaned forward and set her feet. I work better with clean lines. That word clean landed between us and burned. I kept my mouth shut and heard my pulse anyway. He slid a consent packet toward my side of the table. She can sign, but backup is wise. He waited while my eyes found the signature spot. My name filled the line before my brain caught up. She placed her palm over the paper. Do not treat him as husband. Her voice held steady because she made it steady. Treat him as the person who answers. The surgeon's eyebrows rose and then flattened. A nurse appeared with a tray of syringes and gauze. Blood's now, EKG next. She tied a strip around an arm that didn't tremble. I watched for a flinch and got one small curl of the fingers. While the printer spat appointment times, the surgeon kept going. If pathology shows spread outside the capsule, we escalate. He adjusted his mask and looked at me finally. You 2 need to decide support roles today. I'm driving her home after. My voice carried more steel than I planned. She stared like I had overstepped an invisible line. I held the stare because someone needed to hold something. Stop acting drafted. She pushed back from the table and stood. I don't need rescuing. She walked to the sink and braced both palms on the edge. The faucet dripped once and felt like a countdown. I stepped closer, but not too close. I'm here because I choose to be. The words surprised even me. She reached for the paper towels and tore one too many. Choices vanish when knives show up, she whispered. The nurse returned with a plastic cup and a time. Surgery tomorrow at 8. She tapped the schedule with her nail. No food after midnight. The room seemed to tilt and then hold. We moved to imaging for a last look before the cut. A technician pasted sensors on her chest with quick patience. Deep breath. The machine hummed and ticked. She stared at the ceiling and counted breaths I couldn't hear. A beeper chirped somewhere far away and then stopped. Done. The tech peeled the pads off and tossed them. She slid off the table without help. I reached out and pulled my hand back half an inch. In the hallway, my phone shook with a new text. Finalize funds by close of business. I angled the screen so she wouldn't see it. She saw it anyway and gave a small, tired laugh. Sign your freedom. She pressed the elevator button and kept her gaze forward. Then come back if you still want to. The doors opened with a rude chime. I felt like a kid caught stealing time. We left the building and the sky shifted hard. A gust pushed her sideways and she corrected with a sharp step. I grabbed her elbow and she didn't shake me off. That tiny mercy felt enormous and fragile. At the curb, a volunteer waved off the transport van. He's got her. The woman winked at me like we were cute. I almost told her there was nothing cute here. I kept quiet and opened the car door. Halfway home, she cracked the window and took a long breath. You're going to break your own rule. The wind took her words and tossed them back. The one about not staying for storms. You hit a storm. I watched the lanes like they might open. You called me anyway. I could feel her looking and not looking. The silence between us shook like an overstuffed drawer. We reached her building and parked crooked, upstairs. She pointed with her chin and waited. I helped her out and followed carefully. Every step felt like a line we might not recross. Inside, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. There's a bag in the hall. She kept them shut while she spoke. If I don't wake fast tomorrow, hand it to the nurse. A request shaped like a warning. I found the bag and set it by the door. Anything else for me? My voice dropped without permission. She opened her eyes and gave me a level look. Yeah, do not pity me in that room. I won't. I meant it more than I expected. But I will be there when they wheel you in. She tilted her head like she was testing for cracks. Show up on time and keep the jokes light. My phone rang again and I turned it face down. She picked it up and checked the caller ID without comment. Finish your business before midnight. She returned it to my palm and walked to the kitchen. I followed and stopped at the threshold. She poured water and sipped like training for a fight. If I lose my voice, she said quietly, you keep speaking plainly. The words lodged under my skin like hooks. I can do that. I stepped in and set the cup down. She held my gaze for 3 beats and then looked past me. Good, then go finalize your papers. I drove to the office with the engine complaining. At a stoplight, I saw my reflection and almost didn't recognize it. The signature flowed from muscle memory and not conviction. The clerk stamped, smiled, moved me along. Back in the car, I stared at my thumb with the ink smudge. It looked like proof of something I didn't want. I wiped it off and it smeared worse. I let it sit and called her number. Done. I kept the word short and clean. Be here at 6, she answered. They want us early. She hung up before I could reply. I sat there listening to a line that no longer held anyone. I reached her place just as the streetlights blinked alive. She opened the door before I knocked, set an alarm for 4. She handed me a charger with a raised eyebrow. We cannot miss check-in. I plugged it in and watched the time rise on the screen. She packed the bag with calm, clipped motions. 2 items, then 2 more, nothing extra. She zipped it and placed it by the door like a promise. Lie down for an hour. I pulled a blanket over her shoulders. She didn't argue, which scared me more than arguing. Her eyes fell. Uttered and then shut. I sat in the chair and counted her breaths. The room stayed quiet except for the stubborn tick of the wall clock. I hated that sound and loved it because it meant she was still here. My alarm icon glowed in the corner of the phone. Morning waited with a blade and a clipboard. They rolled her to pre-op and paused at a taped line. An anesthetist checked a chart and looked at me once. Any questions before we start? Her hand tightened around the rail. Do it fast and right, she fixed on my face and held. If I panic, anchor me. I placed my palm over hers and felt the tremor. A nurse slipped a cap over her hair and smiled thin. We'll medicate in a minute. She mouthed a number I should remember. I nodded and lied that I would. The surgeon stepped in with fresh gloves and a clipped tone. We begin with half, we pivot if frozen tissue shows spread. He searched my eyes for hesitation and waited. If it points ugly, take everything. My voice didn't shake this time. She stared past me at the ceiling and blinked slow. Don't rewrite your life because of my neck. I'm rewriting it because I want to. The words surprised me as they left. She exhaled and let her shoulders drop. Show up after the cut or don't. They pushed toward double doors that swung and swallowed her. I followed to the edge and stopped. She raised 2 fingers without looking back, a salute or a warning. I parked in the waiting bay and stared at the screen. Numbers shifted with no meaning I could hold. A volunteer offered coffee and I refused. My stomach had its own plan. 30 minutes in, a pager cracked the quiet. Doctor wants to speak with family. It wasn't a question, my knees didn't love that sentence. He met me under a clock that ticked like a metronome. Rapid analysis shows malignant features. Each word landed hard and clear. I recommend total removal and sampling nodes. He waited for my answer. Yes, I signed a fresh form with a dull pen. He watched my hand and then my mouth, proceeding now. He turned and vanished through the swinging doors. Time lost shape as I paced a crooked path. A message from the legal office lit my screen. Funds posted, file closed. I stared until the letters blurred. The same volunteer returned with a cup and kinder eyes. I took it and set it down untouched. A child laughed across the room and then stopped. The echo felt wrong. 2 hours later, the surgeon reappeared with his mask at his throat. We found disease outside the capsule. He spoke plain and fast. 2 nodes involved. The floor tilted and straightened. Vocal cords stimulated well. He lifted his hands like proof. She will be hoarse, not silent. I let air back into my lungs. He didn't offer a victory. Why wasn't I called earlier in the month? The question surprised us both. He hesitated, then chose blunt truth. She filed a directive to notify only if emergent. She tried to spare me. It came out tired and raw. He studied my face for blame and found none. Recovery in an hour if no bleeding. He pointed me back to the chairs. The hour crawled like wet paint. I scrolled my phone and found the old voicemail again. I deleted it and felt worse. The act didn't clean anything. A nurse waved me into a curtained bay with soft beeping. She lay propped with a swollen bandage and cracked lips. Her eyes opened when my shoes squeaked. You stayed, her voice rasped like gravel in a jar. I stepped closer and took the corner of the blanket. I said I would. It sounded simple and true. She reached up and touched the tape by reflex. I caught her wrist before she scratched the edge. Leave it. She nodded and settled with a small wince. Report, she wanted facts more than comfort. All of it is gone. I kept it measured and steady. 2 nodes were dirty, her jaw clenched and released. Thought so, she closed her eyes and breathed through it. I felt pressure under the ear all week. New information landed while the monitor kept time. A pharmacist poked in with a tray and quick hands. We start calcium supplements now. She slid pills toward me and labeled a schedule. Throat soreness expected. Her voice aimed calm at both of us. I asked for caregiver instructions and wrote them down. Dosages, times, warning signs. The nurse watched me commit and relaxed a little. Responsibility fits different when you earn it. She gestured for the water and sipped slow. Did you finalize? Her question hit like a thrown stone. I held her gaze and nodded once. She stared at the ceiling and blinked back a sting. Good, you won't feel forced. I heard the relief and the damage. Both sat there with us. I'm still here by choice. I put the cup back in her hand, not because a paper vanished. She studied my face and looked for slack. She didn't find any. The surgeon returned with printed orders and a firm timeline. Pathology in 48 hours. He checked the drain and the dressing. Endocrine consult tomorrow morning. He signed the T with a fast flourish. She tugged my sleeve and waited until he left. I scheduled surgery before you filed. The admission came dry and exact. Then I bumped it to today. She watched my reaction like a referee. You wanted a clean exit. I didn't make it an accusation. Her fingers twisted the blanket and stilled. I wanted your yes to be real. You got my yes now. I leaned closer so she could see it, and it is real enough to test. She closed her eyes and a single tear escaped on cue. The nurse adjusted the bed and checked the line. We moved to a room in 10. She glanced at me and raised an eyebrow. You staying? I answered by taking off my coat. Tell them to list me as contact. I pulled a chair toward the rail, not spouse. The word tasted like metal again. The nurse nodded and tapped it into a tablet. She watched all of that with a tired smirk. You like rules when they cut both ways. I shrugged and tucked the sheet under her elbow. I like clarity when the ground moves. Her eyes drifted but didn't close. If the voice changes, you still look at me the same. It wasn't a command. It was a test I planned to pass. I will hear you either way. I set the schedule on the tray and speak for you until it returns. She breathed out and let that settle. Transport arrived with a rolling bed and calm instructions. I helped guide a corner through the doorway. My phone buzzed again with a number I didn't recognize. I let it die on purpose. In the new room, monitors settled into a steady rhythm. I pulled the chair close and took her hand. The bandage pulsed with her heartbeat. Night pressed against the window like a witness. She stared at me until the meds dragged her under. Don't make me beg tomorrow, she whispered. Just be there before rounds. I told her I would and meant it like a vow. Her hand curled like a claw and would not relax. Pins in my lips. She stared at me and flexed again. I hit the call button and pressed my palm to her forearm. The tremor jumped under my fingers and climbed. Calcium now? The nurse slid in with crisp focus. Tablets, swallow, another set. She checked the strip and tapped the screen twice. Any numbness in your cheeks? We both knew the answer. She tried to form a joke and failed. A sharp cramp seized her thumb into her palm. I rubbed the base of her hand until it eased. Sweat dotted her hairline and scared me more than the bandage. Rounds arrived like a tide that didn't wait. The endocrinologist scanned the chart and lifted a brow. Parathyroid stunned but alive. He wrote a tight plan and circled a time. We add active supplement and monitor overnight. Pathology, I pushed the word out before he left. He paused and looked at both of us. Margins clean, microscopic spill beyond the capsule, 2 involved nodes. We recommend iodine ablation. The room tilted and held. How soon? Her voice scraped but carried weight. 4 to 6 weeks after healing, he answered. Low iodine diet, isolation for a couple of days. She stared past him and measured the cost. He handed me a packet with strict rules. No close contact for a short stretch, separate linens, flushed twice. I took it and felt the absurdity hit hard. I would stay and then step away when she glowed. When they left, she tugged at the tape and winced. Don't flinch when my voice drops again. Her breath hitched on the word voice. I sat closer and made sure my eyes didn't move. I filed papers so you wouldn't feel trapped. She watched my face like a test monitor. I told them to call only if the knife failed. New words, sharper than the old secrets, landed between us. You plan to face it alone. It sounded like an accusation and also a prayer. She looked at the window and let silence do the rest. I counted 3 beats and then broke it. I choose the ugly parts too. My throat burned but stayed steady, even when we eat at different tables during treatment. Her mouth twitched into something that was not a smile. A clerk wheeled in consent for radioactive therapy. Signature acknowledges isolation rules. She pushed the pen toward the rail. I signed without blinking and dated the line cleanly. The clerk glanced at the bandage and left fast. She pulled a small envelope from the side drawer, my name on the front in her straight handwriting. I wrote this in case the worst happened. She tapped it once. Open it only if you walk away. I slipped it into my pocket and felt its thin edge. I'm not opening it. The sentence came out like iron. She studied me for cracks and found a few. I let her find them. Her fingers drifted to her neck and stopped. The pain showed and then she buried it. Tell my mother after iodine, she murmured. She will worry and make noise. I nodded because she came right. The nurse returned with a squeeze bottle and new pills. Speak sparingly today. She adjusted the monitor pace and checked the drain. If tingling returns, press this. She placed the control by her good hand. I need a proxy on file. I pulled out my phone and opened notes. Not spouse, just authorized advocate. She blinked slow and considered the weight. Do it, but no hero speeches. I stepped into the hallway and called the attorney. Medical power and emergency waiver, I said. No small talk, no excuses. He asked if I understood the legal split, and I said yes without hesitation. Back inside, her breathing had settled into a ragged rhythm. You stayed through the worst hour, she whispered. Most people vanish when beeping gets loud. I remembered all the doors I had closed and felt ashamed. After iodine, you sleep in the other room, she added. You follow the rules even if it hurts. I agreed before she finished. The promise tasted strict and necessary. She chewed an ice chip and watched me squeeze hand sanitizer again. You're annoying, a slow blink. Keep being annoying. My chest loosened for the first time all day. The endocrinologist reappeared with lab updates. Levels rising, good response. He drew a line up the page and underlined twice. If stable by evening, discharge tomorrow, follow up in clinic next week. Schedule it now. I pulled my wallet and gave my ID. List me for alerts. The clerk typed fast and didn't look up. A beep acknowledged the change and locked it in. We try to walk to the door and back. 5 steps, pause, another 5. She gripped the rail and breathed through pressure. Feels like someone removed a hinge, she muttered, then kept moving. In the chair again, she scanned my face with new intent. If you regret this later, tell me directly. No softness, just rules. I don't do half-truths anymore. I accepted those terms like a contract. I texted the office to postpone a meeting I no longer cared about. The reply flashed with exclamation points I ignored. I turned off notifications and felt quiet land for once. Night crept in without negotiation and the floor grew still. She dozed, then stirred, then slept again. I held her schedule and checked times against the wall clock. Each tick marked a life we hadn't planned. Near midnight, she woke and found my hand near hers. One more favor, she whispered, barely there. When my hair thins, cut it straight for me. I didn't promise well, I promised completely. I pressed the call button once more and asked for fresh ice. The nurse nodded and moved with calm efficiency. I folded the iodine instructions and slid them under my phone. Tomorrow had terms. I was signing all of them.